I'm grateful for the color green. I'm grateful for the color yellow. I'm grateful for the color blue. It reminds me of you. So true, so blue, so you. Oh my love, you're the color of the ocean, ever changing with the light of heaven. Oh my love, you're the color of the rainbow, promises from Noah's sorrows. Oh my love, you're the color of the moonlight, of the starry night, of the sunrise. Oh my love, you're the light in my eyes. I'm grateful for you.
So this is Dr. Hong, and
this is Reverend Lang
this is episode 1
of Pandamix or Pandamix.
Pandamix, healing conversations and practices for in-between times. And so in this opening, we would lay out the context of why we're doing this, how we're going to do this,
And
what it
who we
means
are.
for us, who we are, and what do we mean by healing conversations, by practices. Okay?
Yeah.
And so along the way, you will hear me inviting us to take a breath. So this is an invitation for active listening. So we're not listening to our conversation passively. We're going to engage in this conversation by being fully present. So please take a breath with me.
So these conversations started because we were actually in South Africa on work, and instead of flying back to New York, we diverted here to Bali. And we've had all sorts of conversations between us and with dear people in our lives. And these conversations about practices for healing is taking place in the context of COVID-19, of economic recession and depression in many parts of the world, in the midst of social unrest and discontent, especially in our United States. It's taking place in part because we had a close friend, white friend, who said there's no systemic racism. And I have a Chinese cousin who says, why can't other people be like us, model minorities?
Well, in my experience, I feel like this is the second refugee experience. 30-something years ago, I left Vietnam as a refugee from aftermath of the war and living in the US for the last 37 years. And here we are back in Southeast Asia again. And I would say it seems like our lives has taken an upside down, inside out twist that we end up here. And I imagine what's happening in the world as well. We are entering into a time of complete uncertainty ambiguity, it feels quite scary sometimes.
Yes, scary and exciting for some of us who can feel safe enough in lockdown to feel excited. That's not for everybody. And the possibilities of change and transformation. And before that, I think we are aware of the need for healing these discontents. Also a looming, a trade war that could end up into a real war between US and China. So these things weigh on us, and it weighs on other people. When you talk about being a refugee a second time, so maybe some introductions. So Home, you were born in the middle of the war, of the American war in Vietnam in the 60s, and you left as a refugee, leaving your family behind, but searching for your father who had already left when you were 12. You settled in the US, you went to Cal State Northridge, you dropped out of college, you started the first Vietnamese American theater company. It was community theater. Your first play was called Laughter from the Children of War.
Laughter from the Children of War.
Laughter from the Children of War, because all of your fellows were refugees and immigrants your age, in their 20s then, who had all suffered from the war. We met in LA doing HIV/AIDS education to the Asian community. You worked as an activist, you did Thai massage, you did life coaching, and then 10 years ago started your doctoral work in education at Columbia University. And since then you've been working with school principals, training them on leadership and mindfulness, and then you've also been a leadership and executive coach.
I just want to emphasize something you said. When I was 22, I dropped out of college. It was a horrible thing for an immigrant to do, to drop out of college and start a theater company. But only years later, I realized that why I needed to do that, because I needed to heal. At the time, it was something I just could not do. I was compelled to gather people, Vietnamese immigrants, gather them together and start telling stories. And then I didn't know at the time that that was like my soul was longing for some meaning making to heal something, and that was the journey that I have started. And in some ways, our journey of healing intersect when we met in Los Angeles. And what I know about you, Leng, is you came from Singapore. Your grandmother, your grandparents left China and came to Singapore, also as immigrants.
Yes.
In a way, you escape Singapore from the heat, but also the strictness and the constraint of Singapore, the smallness of Singapore at that time, to come to the US to study. And you did your study in economics, political studies,
I did international relations at Princeton.
And then you went on to do your divinity, master's in divinity at Harvard. And when we were living in Los Angeles, one day you said, the church gave me too much pain and they pay me so little. And we were plotting our way to escape LA, and we were so poor at the time. And
we weren't poor. I mean, they were really poor people, but yes.
Actually,
there was no savings.
You were a poor priest in a small parish, and I was somewhat of a starving artist at the time. And so you went back to school, get your MBA. So also from the same school, Harvard Business School. So here you are, many years later, reconnected with your understanding, your passion with history and politics and the humanities. And so all of this started out with many walks that we have had since we've been here in Bali and breakfast conversations. And I keep asking all these questions. What's going on? Why are people saying there's no such thing as systemic racism in America? How to heal? We start gathering people online to practice mind kindness together. And so as we are engaging these conversations, my intention and our intentions is that we do the healing work ourselves through this conversation. And what do we mean by healing? What do we mean by healing?
So perhaps by way of introduction as well, to talk about my own healing story, you alluded to a career I've had as a minister in the Episcopal Church, and to coaching, and to leaving Singapore and returning. You know, my journey of healing is to seek truth and to let truth heal. And this may sound incredibly heady, which I suppose I am. But to tell the story that growing up in Singapore, that was just post-colonial, much of my experience was to look at the West, Great Britain at that time, as the place I wanted to live in. After all, when you grew up with reading children's storybooks, you think, wow, there's something fantastic about the West. And then I became a Christian of my own accord when I was 12, had essentially a mystical experience. But my experience, the larger experience, was to figure out that not everything that I received and got from the West was good or even necessarily true. And that first awakening was being an evangelical Christian, very devoted to Christ, and knowing I was gay, and finding that what the church was teaching was, at the end of the day, just painful. And then the decision is it painful and true, therefore I must change, or is it painful and wrong? And then it was like, it's wrong. And to find that inner capacity to declare.
I wonder whether it's wrong or it's actually just a lot of lies.
Thank you. And then to come to that place of not just wrong, it's lies, is itself a very painful, searing journey, but ultimately a journey of healing. Because it also means, what do I now do with the baby in the bathwater? Do I throw it all out? And my practice has been to then ask, what is the baby? What is the essence of the thing that is worth keeping? And then to develop this capacity to look at what is the dirty bathwater and to throw it out. And so part of our conversations would be to help each other and to help people listening on to look at the essence of things that are really worthwhile.
Worthwhile not just to keep, but actually to grow.
To grow.
And to love.
Yes.
And so this is what I sense when we say healing. What do we mean by healing? Because oftentimes people think of healing as you need to get fixed of some problem, like take this pills, or fix something about you. And
Yeah.
I think my sense of what I feel is important when we use the word healing is really the process of becoming whole, becoming true to ourselves, becoming more honest, more kind, more in integrity.
Whole. And so wholeness here is not about being cured. It's actually that process in which things have broken apart and you're going to bring the fragmented pieces back together. There is that picture of the Zen monk bringing the broken pieces together and putting it together, and the seams are made of gold. and then there's a new beauty and a new wholeness to that. So part of the practice of looking for healing and being healed is the search, is the journey of discernment. And so that discernment that we look at has 6 dimensions. The personal, the sacred, the historical, the political, the scientific, the ecological. So 6. Pretty big, and we'll cover it in the following episodes.
I want to press into this point of healing, because I imagine some people are listening and they're saying, well, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me, nothing to heal. And sometimes the word healing has a connotation of something wrong with you. So how would you address that? Because my sense is this. Our lives 4 months ago, before COVID, and to now, something fundamentally has changed. The way we live, how we engage with the world. We don't fly the way we used to fly anymore. We work differently. And I also have a sense that with all the things that unraveling, we are living in a trauma-provoking time and then trauma-inducing time.
So you'll provoke old traumas and then create new traumas, is
Yes.
what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
Indeed.
my sense of the healing is not just healing what's here inside me at the personal level, healing the trauma that's passed down from our ancestors, the historical trauma, and then the political trauma that we live in the system, and the mindset that I would say damaged many people. And so I wonder, for you, Leng, what's important in these conversations for you, especially around healing?
For me personally, is continually looking at what is the emergent truth. Given that a large part of my own youthful journey as a teenager, again, as I said, around Christianity and Western Christianity, what I later came to call white American evangelical Christianity, that I kind of accepted and believed and thought really the United States is God's gift to the world. And then later on, you and I have lived there for 30-something years, almost 40 now. And on the one hand, feeling blessed and deeply grateful by what it offered us and the relationships we've had there. And then encountering this dimension of the politics and the history, and realizing not only were we told a half-truth, some of it was just plain untrue. And then how to hold the brightness of the gift and the lies. And we say that because, so that's at a political dimension, right? And I think folks understand what we are talking about that's going on in the world right now. There is also the personal dimension as well. So we talk about healing in all these dimensions. So at a personal dimension, the corollary is, as we all look at our own lives as well and tell our own stories or examine that, what's going on with the truth and the lies of our family stories.
The secrets.
Yeah, the secrets.
The secret sorrows.
The secret sorrows and regrets, because this is the interesting thing. We were sometimes lied to in our family systems because they wanted to protect us and they wanted to protect themselves. And then we discover, oh, that's not the real story of mom or dad or grandparents or family background.
As you were saying that, it just triggered a memory of the story of the Buddha. The story of the Buddha is that he was born in a palace, and his father, the king, wanted to protect him
and shelter him
from the suffering of the world, keep him locked in this fantasy make-believe world. And it took him escaping the constraint of that fantasy, that life inside the palace, to go out and discover, wow, there's really suffering, and suffering is everywhere. There's death, there's sickness, there's illness, there's pain in the world. And so my sense is that these types of conversation, what we are inviting the audience, the listeners into, is leaving the comfort zone of our make-believes.
Yes, of make-believe world. Can I get back to the Buddha story? Because, that's almost like vogue these days in the West to say you're a Buddhist. I remember studying the Buddha story as an 8-year-old in school in Singapore. We didn't do meditation, we just did his story. And the story was that by pure chance, he left the palace and he saw a funeral procession. He saw a sick person. He saw a poor person, and then he saw a funeral, meaning a dead person, and that kind of shattered him. Mm-hmm. So this moment of COVID as a metaphor for all the unraveling is, in the world, we are all waking up to fundamental pain and disruption. Someone said to me, that our very, very rich friends and colleagues are having a really hard time because, even with a private jet, you can't leave the United States anymore. You are stuck. What good is that money if you can't spend it and travel every weekend to Capri or, Switzerland? So the entering into healing conversations is actually to dig up what is painful. The word to converse have root words in digging up for re-examination. Mm-hmm. And the word for dialogue in the Greek has to do with moving through and deeply into something in order to make new meanings. So we have other areas of meanings. Do you want to talk about it? We said the political, historical thing that's obvious, the personal. Then there's the sacred dimension. The sacred dimension being that dimension that holds all of us in unity, the cosmic dimension. You can call it God, Buddha nature, Christ nature, your true self, self with an S. Not the small self that is our ego. These four faces or dimensions I want to attribute to my Princeton mentor, Manfred Halpern, who talked about the personal, political, historical, and sacred dimensions. We'll interweave these.
Yes. And part of the exploration for us, the experimenting that we will also be doing, is to bring in the scientific as well as the ecological, our relationship to reason, and also our relationship to the natural world. Mm-hmm. So it sounds very ambitious. I'm a little nervous, but I'm also excited because this is also unknown territory for both of us. Please take a breath with me. I just want to take a moment to say, how are we going to do this together? So the invitation is so actually to slow down. So as you listen to our conversations and as we listen to each other, I would like to invite us into an experience of slowing down a little bit so that we could feel. I have a teacher who said, if you could feel it, you could heal it. So as you listen, sometimes some of what we're saying can be quite provoking, challenging, maybe difficult to hear.
Speak for yourself.
So the invitation is to really just take a moment to slow down, take a breath, give us a chance, try it out, and then see what happens, right? The other, I think, really important for us in this process is to ask questions. And you will hear us go back and forth asking each other questions. And sometimes these questions meant to challenge, these questions meant to dig deeper. And so as you watch this or listening to this, we invite you to ask us questions so that we can learn from your question as well. One of our favorite poets, David White, said that if you want to live a beautiful life, learn to ask beautiful questions. So part of the healing process is to ask beautiful questions.
And we are asking those questions within the context of an acknowledged immense division between us, and paradoxically of an immense communion that we all have. And it's really to hold both our divisions and our communion strongly. Because to enter into the personal, political, and historical realities of our lives is to really look at these divisions and tearing and fragmentation, and to be courageous and to do that, and we will do that, and sometimes we may get it so-called wrong or right or whatever it is, but we're going to go for it.
Yep.
And that can only take place with any level of meaning and sense if we also hold that we're in deep communion, and that's the sacred element, like the breath we have taken. And for me as a Christian, to talk about all the nasty, painful stuff in a context of being deeply loved, and my own belief and practice that we were made in love and created for love, and are on this life journey together to love better.
Yep. And I can share that even within the last 3 months, some of the division that you're talking about, some of our closest friends, because of what's happening in the US, the unrest and the reckoning of the historical trauma in America, there's already a rift in some of our relationships with some of our dearest friends, and this has been family, and this has been incredibly painful. And I imagine we're not alone in that. And so we want to bring this up so that we can admit to the pain of that division and still find love in our shared humanity, our common humanity. And this is something your friend Ampotutu had said. She said, call out the differences. Take a stand for something, but make sure that it's always done in love. And so how to do that? It's easy to use the word love. I think it's so difficult to practice. And so what I hope that these conversations is a kind of practicing that you and I do it with each other, and then we invite the listener, the audience, the viewer to do it with your own family, with your own friends, and with your own community.
And in this sense then, as we talk about love, doing it in love or for the sake of love, when we do it with each other, we are also doing the work of justice. I think of my Princeton professor and Dr. Cornel West, who would often say that justice is love made public.
So, here's a beginning of a journey. And please join us. Share with us your thoughts, your experience, your feelings. Challenge us in our thinking. Do it with kindness. Do it with care. And do it with courage. Please take a breath with us.